Naomi. I am so
Hello.
happy to be able to see you in person right now. So thank you for being on the show.
It's so great to be here. I'm so excited to see your face too, in person, in the flesh, not on social media, but right here. It's wonderful.
I know, like in real time, it's one of those things we get to know each other and people through social media, which is a fantastic thing. But then it's different to have that real time connection and conversation. And so I've really been looking forward to having you on the show.
Me too. It's totally different. Plus, I get this great bird's eye view of your studio, which I'm loving. I'm loving seeing how it all, where the magic happens, how high the table is behind you. Like, oh, it's all coming together. I love it.
Thank you. I was going to try and clear it out. I used to think I would do that. And then I'm like, you know what? This is just the real experience of it all, right? Like
That's
the
it.
messy, the clean, all the parts of creativity, which you are so familiar with
Oh my
as
gosh.
well.
Yes, full transparency. Those of you who can't see us, like I'm at a new office space. I'm sitting here for the first time, and it's in an old building, so the floor is slanted. So if you see me start to drift off to one side, it's just because we're embracing the imperfection right now.
The realness of life, right?
That's
That's
right.
what it's all about.
That's right.
Oh, man. Well, before we dive into all of the incredible things that you're creating surrounding living a full life, which includes the messiness, the beautiful parts, the sad parts, all of those things, I really want to learn more about you and your background. So if you could just briefly tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became interested in the arts.
Yeah. I can't remember a time when I wasn't interested in the arts. I grew up among creatives. I have a lot of artists and writers in my family. And in particular, my mom is a creative person. She's done every kind of artwork known to humankind throughout her life. And my brother is a musician, a career musician. So I grew up sort of with a love and passion for artists, but also caring for their full well-being and expression because I could witness the challenges along the way. So I myself studied theater in college and then went on to study Japanese theater after college. And it was while I was studying Japanese theater at a residency that a girlfriend had advised me to check out a performance studies graduate program at NYU. And that's where I really sort of cut my teeth on the avant-garde theater and art scene in New York. That was like in the early 90s. And from there, I began a career as a fundraiser, basically a storyteller for artists working in the nonprofit arena. And I became a director of development and a planner. And while I was working in the arts, hiring people even much younger than I was then, and I was in my 30s, but kids coming right out of college wanted more from me than just a good performance review. And that really sparked in me an awareness that I wanted to do more for them. And so I started my first coach training program back in the early 2000s. And that's a whole other story, how the journey from that time till now, but it really kind of ignited in me a sense that I would be combining my interest in art as a field and also in the artists themselves and their personal transformation over time. And as I continued to grow, I used many different platforms to elevate artists. I even started my own nonprofit, which functioned for about 3 years and brought in lots of mid-career artists, especially to test new work and that kind of thing, and developed a book around that. And now this book that I have here about individual artist stories about big change and the period that follows. So it's been a whole life sort of expression coming to a place where I myself feel like I'm fully expressed. So in a way, I had to take this path to become who I needed to be and take the risks I needed to take to grow.
I love what you said there about you had to take this path to be fully expressed within yourself, because I feel like so many times anyone, artists, creatives, otherwise, feel like they have to stay in this track. And then getting to the end of that means they will be fully developed. But for most people, and mostly with creatives, there's a lot of different things that combine and weave together to allow us to fully express all of our different interests, the things that we're doing. So the fact that you were like studying theater, nonprofit, championing artists, writing books, I think is just fantastic and has really brought you to what you're doing today, which is coaching artists and working with artists and really
Yeah.
supporting them, which is beautiful.
It's so true. We talk about the meandering path of the artist's life. When you grow up in a conventional environment, as I did, we often have the sense that you start at one point in your life and education, and you move forward in an upward motion to some other point where you've completed your journey. It's a straight line. And I don't think I know a single artist in my life that has a straight line trajectory. So there is, and you'll see in the book too, this valuing of the zigzagging path, valuing how we intuitively move from one thing to the next. And yes, there are through lines and there are creative outputs at various stages, but the directionality is a really important element. The shifting of the direction is an important way we challenge ourselves and grow. So you really have to value your own growth, and so many artists really do. That's the supposition in the book, is that artists in particular who want to grow have a facility with change already, because you already face a blank canvas every day where you don't know what the outcome will be. It's really no different in life in terms of the skill set you have to bring to the future that you can't see.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I want to dive into your book like right now because I think it's a really needed book that you created. So you recently, I mean, just recently released the book, Braving Creativity. And I would like to hear a little bit, and I'm sure all of our listeners would too, a little bit more about what brought you to the point of writing this book to serve artists and also to fully express yourself.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I the concept for the book probably got birthed around the time my husband passed away, about just about 8 years ago, in a week or so.
Mm.
And at that time, I had begun to see and understand a belief that I had about myself, that I wasn't the brave one, I wasn't the courageous one in my family growing up, that I was change averse, risk averse, all of that. And when my husband died, I could see the proof in my behavior without him that I really was brave all along in many, many important ways. And then having to raise my two kids in the subsequent years through all the messiness of stepping into this new person I would become after that identity and that life was over, I was reminded about my strength in my ability to rebound, to be resilient, to continue to pursue the truth for myself, even when it was really painful and difficult. And when I was ready, and I only knew that sort of intuitively, there was a point about 6 years in where I knew I was ready to take a real risk. And I left my full-time job in fundraising at a museum, and in order to coach. So I left the full-time job in order to coach full-time. And it wasn't clear to me that I would write a book then, but I was always a storyteller, grant writing. And in the past, when I studied performance art in graduate school, I had the good fortune of meeting some amazing performance artists. And at that time, I used some of my life story to present in prose form at theaters as a confessional performance artist would. And so I returned to that after my husband died. About a year and a half after he died, I was able to write material based on some of my really messy dating experience. In particular, after he died, there's a lot of comedy there. There's always some comedy on the other side of major grief. And it was amazing. It was exhilarating. It was connecting. It was growth affirming. And in doing that, I was able to recognize that other people thought that was brave. So when other people said, wow, that was brave, when you walk off stage having revealed a lot of personal stuff you would never tell a therapist or even your best friend, you wonder, why did I do that? Like, how is that possible that I could do that here and not elsewhere? How could I tell the truth in this way? How could I show up with this strength, this courage, this presence? And so over the course of those years, when I was growing through all of that, I was seeding this eventual next step, which was to leave that job, start the business again, the coaching business. And then across my field came this book writing program, and I just was ready to say yes. The title, everything else came naturally because that concept of bravery and my curiosity about it was really front and center at that time. And that's sort of how it started.
I love it. So in the book, you share a bit of your story in being brave, and then you share the stories of other creatives being brave. So I have a couple of questions coming out of that. Um, One, I would really love to hear you share a story from the book, maybe a little bit about an artist being brave in a certain situation. And my second question is, have you maybe through your experience and through telling the stories of others about artists to be brave, do you have an idea of how we can, the listeners, anybody listening, like a way that they can embrace being brave, like a how to way?
Yeah, I love it. Well, yes, there are 15 stories in that book and my own story, so 16 altogether. And that came about, excuse me, and that came about because I had wanted, in addition to my client roster, I wanted to have conversations about this topic of big life change and the period of transition that follows. So I was really a student of transition for a long time because I had I had told this story that I myself was so afraid of change, and I resisted it with a lot of effort. I exerted a lot of effort not to do the things that scared me. And so I wanted to have these conversations, but I wasn't sure anyone else would want to have these conversations with me. Did anybody else care about this kind of gray area? Because when you talk to an artist, you're almost always asked about your art. And so I really wasn't sure they would want to talk about this other stuff that's like my obsession. So I did. I went ahead and started to talk to artists on Instagram, people I had known over the years, but have these sort of public live conversations. And that led to longer conversations that are recorded in the book. So one such story, for instance, was one of the earliest artists that came on. I met her through a granting organization where I live. And the other thing is, I would get on the phone with people and not know if they had a big change story. I had no idea. It wasn't like I said, this is a criteria for a conversation. But it so happened that 9 times out of 10, there was always some catalyst that ignited a process of real grappling. Actually, grappling was a word that came up a lot in these conversations. And so this artist, her name is Antoinette Wysocki. She's a painter, and she has a beautiful career and a beautiful family. And she is, an artist like so many that and work within yourself, who just doggedly pursue their craft. Ever since she was young, it was a priority for her to really put her art first. And when she had a family, she had to make adjustments. She says in the book, I had to change my studio schedule, even though I resisted it at first, because you can't parent and be exhausted all the time. So that kind of stuff was started. She was, as that transitioned into parenting happened, she was having to confront her resistance to certain things. The story for her, though, starts one day where she's dropped off her boys to school and she's on a quiet country road going home, and a truck comes at her from the wrong lane and hits her head on and crushes her painting hand.
Oh my gosh.
And she
That
says, no, 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 this is not how I'm going out. I have so much more to do. And that's all she remembers at that point. And we got to speak about, I don't know, it was like months after the surgery, the exact dates in the book, but it was way less than a year. It was months after the first or second surgery, and she's had many since then. And she had already really first heavy duty resistance of no, 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 this isn't happening. This is not happening. And she realized early on but not right away, that her resistance was getting in the way of her recovery because she wasn't allowing anyone to help her. And what we unearth in the story, as we do in so many stories, is what are the beliefs and narratives that inform that perspective, that inform that intense level of resistance. What was the threat that was present for her if she allowed herself to be vulnerable? How was her denial serving her? And we learn in the story that she got messaging growing up that you can't trust anybody, that you have to take care of yourself, that vulnerability was weak and that you had to man up. And the rest of the story is how she begins to soften to her reality and open up to, and you asked about what are some of the things we can do. One of the great tools that she shows us is play, is playing with new ways of being with paint and canvas, and start over with the mindset of play. And in one sort of anecdote in the story, she invites her son into the room with her so she would know she was only playing. And there's so many interesting intersections in this story as she moves through it, and begins to open up to the reality that is in front of her. And as we approach the end of the story, you can start to sense from her that even though she thinks it's a really harsh way to learn a lesson, there is a lesson here, and there's possibility that would not have been manifested had life not occurred in this way, had this tragic sudden crisis not inflicted her life or impacted her life in this way. So it's just a great story of the event not being the issue as much as the process that follows being the opportunity where we are grappling, and to choose to grapple and relieve ourselves of grasping onto resistance and saying, no, 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 this isn't happening.
Wow. Like there's so many nuggets in this story that starts with such a tragic beginning, but like you said, the things that we can pull from it, because I think as humans, we really kind of do resist change, right?
Yeah.
Even good change, we can
Yeah,
self-sabotage. Um,
absolutely.
and so I love how you were saying like this idea, like this transition and being brave after once the change happens and you don't have a choice but to move forward. And I feel like, and I'm wondering about the stories in here, if most of them are that situation, which is a change that was brought on by something that you don't want or you wouldn't ask for or you would change. Do
Right.
you feel like most change happens for people that way?
No, actually, I think most change for especially women in our cohort who are aging, a lot of the time, and about a third of the book is devoted to this, we are provoking change because we have met our own personal threshold for suffering. We're like, okay, I'm done with that, suffered enough. I'm going to make a choice to move in a different direction. It does mean that we still have to let go of certain ways of being in the world. It has a similar trajectory as other change, but it's the the event is coming from the outside, is coming from the inside more than less. And you also mentioned even when good things happen, change gets provoked. Like it can scare us when we're invited to have a beautiful opportunity to show our work at some major place. I mean, who hasn't had the imposter syndrome, like, in their lives? Like, no, not me. I'm not that person or that good or that smart or that talented. And so opportunity is also another um, foundation shifting catalyst that can awaken us to some of these underlying beliefs that have limited our growth over time. And we then have a choice to make. And that's where coaching comes in, because we really work to develop our awareness skill sets when I'm coaching, so that you can bring this unconscious driver of our lives into conscious awareness and then be the creator of your life by making choices that move you in the direction of your heart's desire. not what other people want, not what, not, in a way that where you can fully declare and express, this is what matters to me. This is what I'm going for. This is my intention. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
powerful, really powerful shift.
Mm. I would love to hear more too about the coaching and what you're talking about here. Can you kind of take us into what it would be like to be coached by you? And you mentioned something about bringing the unconscious to the conscious, which is
Yeah.
something I'm really interested in. So I'm wondering if you could talk about how that plays into everything you're doing as well.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's so fun. It was really fun interviewing everybody because it really was an interview for the book, and but you couldn't really interview for the book without coaching the interview out of people. So a lot of times, they were like, wow, I've never looked at it that way. Wow, I didn't realize. Wow, wow, I'm grateful to hold this space because I haven't really reflected on this in this way. And I think that's part of it, is that we don't really, and the culture doesn't really encourage us to hold that space just for our creative uh, becoming. And so coaching is really a container in that way, where clients typically come to me as a result of one of these three catalysts. And they have met their threshold. They're at my front door, so to speak, because they know they want something, but they're still scared, and they still have no idea in their minds. They think they have no idea how to go about it, if they can do it. And they just and what the story will be that they're going to write. They don't really have a strong vision for it. And it's amazing to me to witness clients go from that moment where they're here, they've paid their money to be here in a coaching dynamic for a 6-month period, and they feel they're excited, but they're really scared. And they begin with me by going through a process of identifying what their heart is desiring, what their vision is, what they're dreaming. And that's really important, because for a long time, they haven't spent energy filling that vision cup. But the other part, that what you're pointing to, is this skill awareness, skill building piece, which is also really important, where you're constantly tending to the parts of you that are afraid of moving through, the parts of you that are still protecting aspects of parts of you that are still tending to aspects of your fear that are really old, like from childhood. And so we're pausing long enough to deepen your learning around the stuff that holds you back, and we're filling your cup about the stuff that you want to achieve and brings you to coaching. And so we start with this liberation from limiting stories and limiting beliefs. And we bring a ton of self-compassion in, because self-compassion is a really key tool in our arsenal of creative tools. Because in order to move past difficult things, we have to be able to tend to the parts of us that are still afraid. So that's a big skill. Then we move toward, and we're always doing this, there's no actual scientific order here, but we're also always playing. We're testing those assumptions that I can't ask for help. I can't submit my application for this. I can't write in this room, it's too hard. I'm never going to be able to write if I do it this way or that way, whatever our stories are. So we play with options by taking really small steps and experimenting. And then we really try to awaken the intuition and follow our heart. What can I open myself up to that makes it possible for me to receive the guidance and the universe's messages when they show up? If I'm closed and my heart is closed and my intuition, I don't trust my own intuition, then I can't receive anything. So that's really important. And then when they've moved, and usually it happens with somewhere within that first 3 months, honestly, that they start to feel this conviction of self and empowerment. And when you feel empowered, you can share like you do, like share like crazy, share your resources, declare your worth, understand and commit to your belonging. Like, I belong here. I may not know everything. I may be new to this, but guess what, people? I belong here. So that sense of belonging is really beautiful when that occurs. And then by the end of a coaching period, clients are flourishing, and flourishing isn't about never having a stumble. It's about having a runway of actionable steps that you can take with your new skill set of awareness and self-compassion and a willingness to play and to listen to your intuition, to rinse and repeat as you move forward in the direction, zigzagging along to a new place of becoming. So the destination is less the goal. It's really the path that we prioritize. Yes, they have a vision. Yes, I have a vision. Do I know where it's actually going to take me? No. So in each moment, I have to just be doing all those things simultaneously in a really easeful way to move forward, to stay open to possibility. And that's the whole point of coaching, really, is to maintain that soft openness and acknowledge and celebrate the small wins every day that move us incrementally forward.
Mm. I'm taking so many notes right now. I'm like, ooh, I'm gonna remember this later.
So
But
glad.
it's so powerful, like what you were talking about, which is that following our intuition. I feel like as artists, that's one of our big tools in the toolbox for actually finding success. And when I say success, I don't mean that it has to be the White Cube Gallery in Chelsea or something like that. I'm saying success in that we are fully invested in our paintings and feel like we are actually open with them. Is that trusting yourself in your work as you're moving forward. So I think that's like so beautifully put.
Mm.
And something that I was thinking about as you were talking, um, and we had kind of mentioned this at a different point when we were connecting, which is this idea of integration. And I find this term and idea, and I'm learning more about it myself. And so I'm curious if you could talk to us a little bit about integration and what that means coming out of working with you and getting all these skills, integrating it into your life, but also integrating into yourself.
Yeah. Integration is, you can be integrating all along, but integration is really a practice, and it has to do with things like pausing to reflect. It can be reflecting by journaling, it can be reflecting by meditation, it can be reflecting by creating something to express yourself and your new learning. So it's a way of cementing. And the way I do it with my clients often is in language, but there are all these other ways to do it. What you stand for, what is the shift that has occurred? Can you tell me? And because when we, at least for me, I know in my experience, when we try to language something, it can be incredibly anxiety producing, because all the thoughts that are used to keeping you nice and tightly put in your little peg or square wherever you are, start to panic. They start to get marshaled up to the top of your brain and your mind, and they start to want to shut you down. And so that's a beautiful place for your intuition to notice, oh, my mouth is getting dry, I'm getting anxious, I'm laughing. Why is it so hard for me to express my worth or what I've come to know about myself in this way? So language is a wonderful way to practice, because you have to actually declare it, whatever it is. And the more you do it, the easier it is. And then you start to replace a limiting belief with a new one. So you might have thought, I'm not the strong one, I'm not courageous, with I am courageous and I always have been. And my courage shows up in this beautiful, open, loving way. Whatever, you find your own particular language, you find your own metaphors, whatever works for you. It can be a vision, it can be a painting, but we have to practice. We have to practice to integrate. We really have to practice to integrate.
I love that. The idea
Yeah.
of language declaring like this type of thing.
Yes. Yeah.
That sounds so powerful because you're also, like writing it or like even speaking it, like you were saying. And it made me think about how, like, it looped me back to you speaking your truths and being brave as well,
Hmm. Hmm.
and how not only are you inspiring others, but you're also, working on yourself, which I think is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it's really fun when you get right down to it, I think, because once you're really like really good at self-compassion, it's awesome. It's awesome to be good at self-compassion because you don't linger in states of shame, of self-shame. You're still human. You still feel things. You still have moments, but you have this awareness and an ability to take a larger view. You're making me think about artists. Like I remember years and years ago working on artist statements with artists through the grant writing process, and I was always amazed back then, and it's still true today, how challenging it is for many artists to just say what they do or what they're creating. I mean, I'm like in love with whatever it is they're doing, and I want them to express it, and I know it's right there in their mouths, it's somewhere, but there's a resistance to putting it into language, or there's fear about putting it into language, or there's discomfort. It's language, it's not my language. I paint, like that's my language, this isn't my language. And so that was one of the places where I think I first started to cultivate that, because this skill set of drawing stories out, because I really wanted that for them. I wanted it to be in language so that other people would be attracted to show up for them for what they were creating. And it wasn't always intuitive to put it in language. And also, if you've ever written a grant, which I know a lot of your listeners have, sometimes the thing that you're creating doesn't exist. Often it doesn't exist until you write it. So it's sort of that cart before the horse. Okay, well, I don't, that's very similar to life. It's sort of like, I don't know what's going to be. So I have to write my narrative in order for it to emerge. And that is really very organic. It really is how the brain works in many ways. How we grow is very much how we play and how we express ourselves sensually in the world of creativity. It's all really connected in that, a lot in the right brain, but it's part of how creativity works. So we really want to move ourselves through different ways of expressing ourselves, because it really will ignite our creativity and our creative thought.
This is amazing. I'm like getting like really jazzed as you're talking about this because it's true. So many times, I mean, tons of listeners and myself, I just went through this. There was nothing there yet. And then I had to write, think, create, let it come out. And now there's paintings or things that are there. So the fact that you are walking with people through that in their creative spaces where they're able to also bring like everything that's been happening in their past or now, or like they've hit that threshold, they're ready to go, just sounds incredibly powerful for their lives. I mean, like, and this is something they can keep bringing back after they've gotten these tools that you were talking about.
Yeah.
So I would love to ask you, where can people that are listening, they're like, oh my gosh, I need Naomi's book and I want to know about her coaching. Like, where can they find you and learn more about this?
Yeah, please visit my website, creativitymatterscoaching.com, or you can also get there by going to bravingcreativity.com, and you can learn a little bit more about the process, learn a little bit more about me and the book, and just get on the mailing list. It's super easy because you get content every week to inspire you, and you'll also learn about the book and get first dibs on things like that. As I grow, you can grow with me.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And you guys, we're also going to have all the information in the show notes, and we'll be sharing it over on Instagram and in our newsletter and all that wonderful, wonderful spaces. And one of my last questions I want to ask you, and this is to kind of leave the listeners with something, is do you have a tip or an exercise or something that artists who are listening could do if they are hitting that threshold or they're in that space where they are ready to just change and move into something new? Is
Yeah.
there anything you'd like to say to them?
The first thing you have to do when you're hitting a wall, you know, when you really feel that intense frustration, which is really a muddy, mucky, not pleasant place to be, is to just practice self-compassion and conjure the part of you that knows better, the part of you that knows that you are worth this effort that you want to take, the part of you that knows that you've always longed for this, the part of you that wants to be bigger than your fear. That's the part you want to nurture and say, I know it's scary for you, which is the you, are the parts of you from way back that either got a message that you, if you're big, someone will die, someone will leave, or you will die, or you will be cast out. I mean, that is the level of fear that is operating underneath the beliefs and the thoughts. And we don't really know it because it's so unconscious and our brain is so routed to perceive the world and others and ourselves in a certain way. And that includes the universe. So there's a process here we have to open up, like you said, and trust the universe will do its part if I do mine. So that self-compassion, there are lots of meditations that can do that, but recognizing that you're in pain, allowing space for the pain and the emotions and the feelings to be there, identifying what it is you need, and then taking a tiny step in the direction of your curiosity and see what you can find there. I think that getting a supportive other, not just any other, but a supportive other to help you navigate those first tentative steps forward is really critical. And that can be a coach, it can be an artist group like Erica has, it can be it could be a therapist, it can be some other supportive other, but that's where I caution people, make sure it's truly a supportive other, and that can hold some gentle accountability with you as you move through that first threshold, because that usually is the hardest step.
That first step. Oh, Naomi, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for being here and sharing about your incredible book that I hope all of you guys check out. Definitely go to Naomi's website. It is a fantastic read. I've had the pleasure of checking it out as well.
Thank you.
And it really lit a lot for me. So thank you, Naomi.
Oh, I appreciate that so much. Thank you. Thank you. And I have to shout out to all the artists in the book, amazing women, playwrights, visual artists, sculptors, multimedia artists, choreographers, filmmakers, singer-songwriters. Like, it's all amazing women traveling the scary, thrilling, messy path of change.
Oh, great. Thank you so much, Naomi.
Yes. My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.